service, seva, serving others. The lessons taught by holy man Sri Satya Sai Baba. Lessons learned by Sunder Aier. Welcome to Soul Turns. This is part 4 in this series of interviews with Sunder Aier, Sai Baba's student, personal attendant, and Sai University teacher. This interview was recorded on June 20th, 2011 in Elyria, Ohio, USA. Sunder Aier, it's a pleasure again to be able to talk to you. This is a series of interviews really in the month of June 2011. This is our 4th in this series. We've recorded other interviews prior to this. About your close proximity to Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. Why? Because you lived in the ashram, around the ashram for 15 and a half years. Why? Because you went to undergraduate school to get a degree. Baba pushed you into graduate school where you got a master's. Baba shoved you into a PhD program where you got your PhD degree. And then I'm sure he helped guide you towards teaching on the staff there for a while at the university. So now that people who may have picked this one first instead of coming the other way around are up to speed, let's just begin with the curiosity of mine, and that is, those who know about Sri Satya Sai Baba may know a lot or a little about his predecessor, Shirdi Sai Baba, and you actually knew of a woman personally, Teta Botu, who was there as a devotee of both at one time. She was alive during the lifespan of Shirdi Sai Baba and lived also at Prashanti Nilayam. Tell us about that.
She was known as Pedda Pottu Amma. Pedda Pottu means the one with a big dot on the forehead. Pottu is the dot, and Pedda means big. So she was popularly known as Pedda Pottu Amma. I don't know what her real name would have been, but she has this huge, the Hindu ladies put a dot on their forehead, which is usually the size of the forefinger. It's tiny, and it gets tinier now with the modern day. But she had one real big, it was almost like 1.5 inch across, and literally filling her forehead. And Swami would, I guess the name came because Swami started calling her Pedda Pottu. And that's how that Pedda Pottu Amma stuck. What struck us as young students of Baba was the complete contrast in our relation with Baba and her relation with Baba. And it's simply because of the age difference. We had a great deal of respect and reverence when Baba would be around us. Complete on the contrary, for her, Baba was like a spoiled brat. Literally. The way she would call Baba, I remember there were times when he would come out for darshan and he would pass by. Sometimes, he chooses to go a different direction. But if he chooses to go a little away from her, she will just yell out to him and say, what has happened today? Come here, I want to talk to you.
Where's my Baba?
And Baba would be like the teenager being embarrassed by his mom in public, and he would get pretty annoyed and try and look away. It was a very sweet, but we knew that Baba was full of love for her. And there was once where we actually shared an interview with her and us. And so we have Pedda Pottu Amma sitting and a few of us sitting. And then Baba had some very wonderful things to tell about her. And she will say, "Oh, Baba, keep quiet. You're talking too much about me. These boys don't have to know those stories and this and that." And I'm not able to recall exactly what specific things that Baba said, because those days I was still learning to understand Telugu, and Baba was speaking a lot of Telugu that evening.
So I didn't even know that part. You had to learn Telugu.
Oh, of course. Telugu was completely different from Tamil, and is still different from Tamil or Hindi. Being brought up in Bombay, Telugu was a completely new language.
But there's this thinking among Westerners also that the state law of India requires school children to be taught in English, and I know that's the official language of the ashram, but still it goes hand in hand with those who speak Telugu as being very useful as well.
If you're living in Puttaparthi, knowing Telugu is definitely useful. And to understand Baba's language straight from him, the best way was to pick up Telugu. And it was easy because you're there, You meet the servants who work in the hostel, and the boys. You get to speak Telugu, you get to understand, and then slowly, the beauty of Swami's version of Telugu was not anything colloquial. In that sense, it was 80% Sanskrit, and Telugu is that way a very rich language, because most of it, when you speak pure Telugu, you understand If you understand Sanskrit, you'll kind of tune into Telugu much faster. So but those days I was still getting to understand him, and so he had some beautiful things to tell about Pedda Pottu. And if I remember in the last interview, we spoke about the 3 zeros, and he said Pedda Pottu is one of those who has passed the 3 zeros, the tests
her money,
of mind.
lost her family, lost her reputation.
And she has written her own book. She has, and people have talked about her life. Exactly as you said, she had lost everything.
Is it
having
true
come
what
to
I've
Baba.
heard, I think from Jody, that it's an astonishing fact, if it's genuine, that she lost 9 children?
I'm not able to recall the exact facts of her life. It's probably in the book that she had written in Telugu, and it's probably out there, definitely. But I do know that she had gone through everything that any saint would have gone through to realize God's presence. And the wonderful thing about her was, when she was a teenager, she actually saw Shirdi Baba, and she, I believe, was a witness when Shirdi Baba said, "I'm going to come back as Satya Sai Baba," the only one. So it's very fascinating to have known her, to have shared the same room with her and Baba, and watch that playful and beautiful and extremely warm. I have never seen Baba's mother, but having seen Pedda Pottamma, I can gauge what could have transpired between Baba's mother and him. Because these were the people who on Swami's birthday would actually place oil on his head for his, they have a oil bath, a ritual where you actually put oil on your head and have a bath. So these are the elderly devotees who would actually go and place oil on Swami's head.
You started sharing some experiences about your shared interview. Do you recall anything from that one interview you had with her and with Baba?
And the reason why I'm able to recall only the 3 zeros and nothing else is because the 3 zeros was one thing that left us all in awe and in complete shock and disbelief that, oh my God, we are literally sitting at the feet of somebody who is not out there to just make your life easy and comfortable, but rather to pull you out of your limitations and set you free. And that transformation requires the complete absence of fear. And to say, I love you, Baba, in spite of any obstacles in life. And the reason why I'm bringing up is because Baba once was reading letters and he said, how come I've read so many letters today and there was not a letter of thanks? This is probably the only time I really saw him very sad. And he said, everybody wants something or the other. Somebody wants kids, somebody has kids, they have problems, they want them to get married, now they are married, they have problems in marriage, they want kids again. It just is never ending. Why didn't I even get a letter of gratitude and of thanks? So for him, and he would always teach us that the greatest thing in a devotee is gratitude. Whatever happens, if you have the courage to say thank you, that is a sign of true devotion. And the 3 zeros that he talks about, where you could lose everything material around you, every single possession that you own could be lost in a fraction of a second, and would you have the guts? So the question arises, would you have the guts or the courage to say, thank you, Swami, thank you, Lord, and I need your love.
Forgive me for my impertinence, and you don't have to answer this question. How severely have you been tested with these 3 zeros that we all have to see hanging over our heads?
I think it's a very personal journey, and if I say I did, there was nothing for you to take home from what I go through. But and these tests don't come in, okay, one test is over, it doesn't mean that it's not going to come again, The
same test.
It's the same test. It could come again and again and again.
Scarier.
Right. I mean, Maya and I have been in situations where we have lost all our monies in a matter of weeks, and I think I shared with you on some other ground on a personal note. But there was every time a temptation to ask, why Swami? Why? And at those moments you think of these 3 zeros and all you say is, thank you, Swami. Thank you for this wonderful experience. There's something to learn. And you look for, and when the moment I say thank you, a sense of tremendous peace floods me. And that gives me courage to take the next step. And the next, and the next step, and the next step. So it's one step at a time. And at each step, if we learn to say thanks, we'll learn to look for the open doors. I always believe if there are 9 or 10 doors, and if they all shut on you, there's always one which can be opened. So we have to look for the open door rather than complain about the 8 doors that are closed on us.
I really think I could rightfully be criticized for my impertinence, but on the other hand, I'm really glad I had the courage to ask this question, because your answer is so very helpful. It's so easy to look at a person such as yourself who's been so profusely blessed, and to know that you too have to pay a price to test your own faith, your own ongoing sustaining faith.
Yeah, from Swami's perspective, from Baba's perspective, for one whose consciousness is one with the whole universe, distance and who's close and who's far doesn't make sense. For you and me, it makes a lot of sense. Oh, you have been close to Baba, I haven't been close to Baba. But for him, it makes no difference. So spiritual journeys, there are no VIP slots and there are no front row seats, and you could have 1,008 interviews with Baba. You could be on the same boat with somebody who has never seen him, as when it comes to the spiritual journey. Because that is becoming one with everything. That is becoming God. You and I are just aspects of the same divinity.
Jody wants you to review the other 2 zeros, which I think are losing family members and reputation.
The one is you lose your material possessions. The second one is, what if you lose all your kith and kin, all your attachments, all the ones whom you claim you love or who loves you? What if you're all alone in the world? And the last one is the most sensitive one, your own reputation. What if people spit on you and you're cursed and you're abused and you're thrown out into the gutter? So now you have nobody to look at, no next meal which is guaranteed for you, and nobody to feed you because you're not a saint or a sage anymore. You're out there. It's scary. But then, do we have the? And it may not. You may not even come to pass it at all. That's the beauty of it. You don't know. We don't know what is our innermost fear, what is our innermost weakness, because as a master would make sure that you're weak, he helps you to get over your weakness. And it's so inside us, he doesn't know, we don't know what it is, but he will know what it is. For somebody it's reputation, for somebody else it is, I don't care about reputation, but I just want all my money safe. So hey, alright, let's prick him at the softest spot, because that is what awakens you. We never like to be awakened when we are sleeping, however soothing the alarm is. There will be always, oh my gosh, it's going off. Even if we had had 8 hours of sleep, 9 hours of sleep, we still don't want that alarm. So we get so accustomed to being where we are, that point of awakening will always be painful. And how that awakening comes and what kind of alarm he's got in store for each one of us, you never know. We never know.
This is so important to consider over and over again. And doubly so, since, as you pointed out, the 3 zeros could be multiplied by 3, and you could have 12 zeros, I suspect, if you had to really learn the lessons over and over again.
I think I think the fear of test or the fear of loss is the greatest fear of all. And the day we completely surrender is the day we say, all right, I have nothing to hold back. And that sets you free. That sets you free.
You'd have no encumbrances, no attachments, no desires, except God.
Except God.
You shared a story about fear in the curtain, and I'm intrigued by it still, and like to have you put some more light on that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because that flows into exactly what we are talking about, because we feel, hey, I'm ready to give up my possessions, I'm ready to do these zeros. We think we are. And I can speak for myself, though I can't speak for people who listen to this video, and I feel humbled. But I just want to share this humorous anecdote with Swami. We were sitting a week or two before the Dasara, the 9-day festival in Puttaparthi, And in those 9 days, Swami would pick up each student to speak something or the other.
And this is back in the early
every
80s,
evening,
maybe?
back in the 80s. Oh, the Dashera, the 10-day festival, continues even till last year. So that's a famous festival in India, where the triumph of good over evil. It's a 10 days where Rama fought with the demons, and the 11th day he won. He claimed victory. So anyway, those 10 days, each of those 10 days, Baba would pick each 1 or 2 students to speak. So a couple of weeks before, he has all these potential speakers around him to find out, okay, what are you all going to speak, and be prepared, you got to speak well, and things like that. It was on that occasion, he said, oh, you have to listen to this experience. So he goes out and brings an elderly woman into the interview room and tells her, now tell your story, tell your experience to these boys. And she tells about her experience in Bangalore, where she wants to have a vision of Baba in her home. Why? Because her neighbor, who was also a Baba devotee, had all these vibhuti materializing and visions and miracles taking place in her house. So she was jealous. This is how she said, I was jealous. Why would Baba go to their house and not to my house? And so she wanted that to happen in her house. So she became so adamant that one day she said, I'm not getting out of my puja room. I'm going to be sitting here and chanting your name till that thing happens. I get some vibhuti on the picture, or I get your darshan. I'm not going to move out. Now I must warn you, don't do this at home. Don't try this at home, as you get a disclaimer out there. Because Baba was just laughing away and just talking how hysteria, and he was laughing at the story. But anyway, as the story goes, 3 days later, she didn't move at all. 3 days and nights, she kept chanting Baba's name, Om Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba Namaha. And the third morning, she said, I had forgotten why even I was chanting. It was because you were so mentally, physically, and spiritually drained. But she was just probably not even chanting. But she said, I kept hearing the chant constantly in my head, and suddenly I saw Baba sitting on the chair in my altar. And Baba said, what did you do then? She said, and she had tears in her eyes, of course, but she said, Baba, I was so frightened. I was so frightened. And then Baba laughed and says, look, she did tapas, she wanted me to come and give darshan, and when she had darshan, she was afraid. Why fear when I am here? Now when I'm sitting here and I'm listening to that conversation, so I was thinking, oh my gosh, how foolish can this lady be? Why would she be afraid? You pray for God, and when He comes, why would He be afraid? What is the reason for fear? So in that moment, I was up there spiritually, and I looked down upon her, down. Oh my gosh, this is immature. That's so immature. Why would he be afraid? I would love to have the darshan like that, That is what was going in my head. And this is how Baba showed us his omniscience. Not that, hey, I know what you're thinking, but very subtly. And this is exactly what happened. So 2 weeks later, the 9th day of the Dashera, I was supposed to speak on the stage. And as the practice goes, we would stand on the backstage in the Purnachandra auditorium. And this is an auditorium with huge curtains, huge ones. They needed those motors to move them. And so when they overlap, there'll be almost 10 or 15 feet of overlap of these curtains.
You can
right?
get lost in there.
I'm sorry?
You can get lost
You
in
could
there.
get lost in, yeah, exactly. They were huge. And it so happened the practice in those days where we would wait in the backstage of Purnachandra auditorium, and Swami would come to the backstage, and then he would speak a couple of words to to us, just bless us or say, don't worry, I'm there, because we would be nervous. We are young kids standing there, and there'll be 30, 40, 50,000 people, and there's a mic and no podium in front, because he didn't believe in any prepared notes. He would say, speak from your heart. So you're going to stand there, you feel completely exposed.
That would be tough.
That was good training for us though, but it was tough, and it was extempore, and you still have to be careful as to not speak too much, or what do you speak, how do you speak it. You don't say anything inappropriate, because Baba trains you, because there are ladies, gents, so you don't use any slangs and things like that. Anyway, so he comes and gives you a couple of words of comfort usually, and then because of the curtains being overlapped, the sevadals or the volunteers usually would stand and keep them apart. So when Baba walks in between and goes out to give this magnificent darshan, because thousands of people are waiting on the other side of the curtain, his hair wouldn't get ruffled. So they would hold the curtain apart and he would just walk like a king and go out. But that day, Baba, now all this is happening very fast. He's coming, he's seeing me, he said, don't worry, I touched his feet, and and he comes to the curtain for them to part, but that day he told the volunteer, no, it's okay, leave it. So he told me, come. And he held my hand and walked and pushed the curtain aside and walked into it. So as it is, I'm nervous about my talk. All right. And now he's holding my hand and he's dragging me and he says, come, come, come. And he dragged me and walked into this curtain. So now it's in between the curtains. So we are walking in about 5 feet in, this closed and this is not at open, it's pitch dark. So as 5 feet into the curtain, he stopped for a second and he said, are you afraid? I said, yes, Swami, I'm afraid. And very playfully he opened the other side, of course, by this time we were out there, and very playfully he said, why are you afraid? Why fear when I'm here? And when he said that, then it hit me, oh my God, this is exactly the thing he told this lady 2 weeks ago, and I felt like kicking myself. and that was very humbling, and every time, even now, 20, 25 years later, when I'm tempted to say, God, why aren't you answering my prayer, or I'm ready for you, I know in my heart, probably I am not. Because we think we are ready, but when the time comes, it doesn't come announced, it comes unannounced. His call comes unannounced, and we always find ourselves lacking for that. So for me, it was a beautiful experience of his omniscience on the one side, but at the same time, his proving to me that you're not ready.
Yeah.
You are as afraid as anyone else is. So
it's a growing process, and boy, when he is your tutor and holds you by the hand and says, are you afraid? You start to get the message pretty deeply. I want to ask you something about you very, ever so casually, Sunder, have said in this and previous interviews that when you were called upon to give a talk in the Divine Presence, and you point out that they're extemporaneous and let Baba speak through you, and you were a young boy, it must have scared the daylights out of many, many young students who are invited to speak. Share a little bit about some of the topics you talked on, some of the experiences you gained from that, and maybe the frequency. How often would he call upon you to speak?
The frequency, of course, depends on how well you spoke and how good the feedback was, and this Baba would pick you up again to speak, but if the feedback was not good, he would say, okay, poor boy, you are a little nervous, practice in the hostel and come. Now, being in the university, we had a lot of occasions in the hostel and in the college to address boys, to MC small events, you know how college and hostel life is usually. So people who aspire to be behind a mic would, prove themselves good. And then when Swami visited the hostel, there would be one or two boys the warden would say, all right, let's give him a chance. I think he does a very good job of speaking. So then you get to speak and Swami listens, oh, he spoke very well, let's put him up on a big stage. And so that's how you progress from one to the other. In festivals like these, we were lucky because we had advance notice. We had notice of a week or so. But I do remember when he was walking in Bombay, where there were millions of people, and he was just walking with darshan, and he passed me and he told me like this. And I followed him, not knowing what he wanted from me. He went to the stage and he said, speak before I speak. That was like 3 minutes notice. And I had to get up and speak suddenly to this large audience. This was before when he took us all for a play, the Shankaracharya play that we did. He was so happy that he took us around with him to Bombay and Bangalore. And this is what he would do. He said, Aiyer, speak. And so for me, I would be nervous then, but for some reason when it comes to talking about Swami, my fear, the public seems to dissolve, and for me it seems like there's a mission to be fulfilled, and for me a greater sense of purpose comes into light. And I become one with so even when I speak at retreats, it's very emotionally heavy, spiritually draining, emotionally draining, but I enjoy it. I enjoy doing it because I know there we create an energy which is far beyond the listener and the speaker. The energy that's generated when you speak about God, when you think about God. Even now, if it's one person millions of miles away watching a video, which I do when I watch your interviews on Souljourn, but the energy that's generated because the topic and the thought has no it's across space and time at that moment. So
It
that's very
also
powerful.
accesses the passion, in my opinion, that's down, concealed within our inner vaults in all of us all the time, that
Yes.
seldom has the opportunity to come out. So what you're talking about is a person's heart being ignited about a subject that's near and dear to them, and they're only too happy to
Exactly.
share it with you.
Right. And I've always wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to be a teacher. So I guess it comes out like I prepare people how to. I don't know.
Don't you think you are a teacher?
I just love it. I love being a teacher because as a teacher, the challenge of a teacher is not just teaching, but constantly learning how to teach and constantly learning the subject itself. So I guess I'm a student and a teacher, and we all are, I guess, in some form or the other.
Well, be a teacher talking about another experience that you had as a student involving a snake.
That I laugh because that was when I was a teacher, actually.
Oh, okay.
So Baba is leading us now. He's giving us keywords in the previous talk, and so it's leading us here. But that was, I want to bring up this story simply to prove the point when I say, and I've said that earlier, that he believes in his word more than you and I believe. He believes his word is very important. He believes his touch is very important. He believes his look is very important. So he knows what he is talking, what he is doing, when he is doing. And this one experience can prove beyond a point to anybody out there, and it goes beyond the science of medicine, of healing, of anything that you can think of, because it's a fascinating story. And I'm so grateful it happened to me, because other than just the experience of it, it's taught me a lifetime of lesson of being humble. So here's how it started. Many years ago in Puttaparthi, I was walking one day after my yoga session back to the hostel, and I found some village urchins jumping up and down and hitting something on the road. And when I got closer, as I walked past, I saw they were hitting a snake. And my heart immediately went out to that snake. And they were jumping up and down, hitting in kotra, and all, they were talking in Telugu, and nobody had, as I watched it, nobody had the guts to hit the snake on, it was a cobra, nobody had the guts to hit it on its head, which I later learned would be the fastest and the easiest way to kill a snake, not by hitting the rest of its body. So this poor snake slithered away, more bruised and more dangerous, I guess, than before. And these boys were saying, good, we should not allow this. That's why I tell you, we have an amazing way to justify whatever we do. We can kill a snake and justify it. We kill human beings and justify it in the name of religion. It's fascinating how we can justify anything and everything. So I was so upset with that. I said, never again will I allow a snake to be killed in my presence as long as I know. I have a fascination for snake. And I didn't realize it till that day that I had the secret love for snakes. I know it doesn't sound, my wife will go yuck, but I do. And so I started catching, and Puttaparthi, the name of Puttaparthi is anthill, the house of snakes, the name itself. So there are plenty of snakes, and being the tropical climate, there's plenty of cobras, the brown cobras. And so I ended up catching these little snakes. From little it became medium-sized snakes, then it became big snakes. They would sneak their way into the college campus, or somebody would spot them in the hostel, right behind, where the garbage was, the food was dumped. And so where the food is dumped as waste before they picked up, there are rats, and where there are rats, there'll be snakes. So it wasn't uncommon for us to bump into cobras here and there. And slowly, the word spread around that, hey, Sunder can catch a snake. Initially, I had told them, if you see a snake, let me know, because I don't want you to start killing it. I can catch it and then take it away and put it out somewhere. Now, I figured on my own how to catch a snake. There wasn't a Discovery Channel then. I would have perhaps avoided this accident of mine. But I just figured, you take a stick and press the head down and put your thumb on top of the head and slowly and carefully put your fingers under its mouth, and once his mouth is there, he just coils around you, but his poor thing doesn't have any strength to do anything. He's more struggling for his life. And then I would take him back to the hills and then leave them out there. Now, as I said to you in the earlier interview, where the good deed starts with a good intention, then it becomes all about the deed, and all about the intention is slowly forgotten. And so I slowly started enjoying the limelight that I was in when I was catching snakes. I mean, you become a popular teacher now, so you have all the students coming to you and say, hey sir, come on sir, show us, next time you catch a snake, let us know. And I said, yeah, I will let you know. So one thing led to the other, and foolishly, I would actually catch a snake and then make the boys touch it and say, feel it. Now this is done in the zoo after a heavy training, so that you don't have accidents. Now this is me just desiring to be adventurous and sharing that adventure with boys and say, hey, don't be scared, touch the snake, it's okay. And see this mouth, and this is how the poison is coming out of its teeth, and not realizing that that's a cobra I'm holding. I mean, I realized it, but I probably didn't understand the impact of what I was doing, potentially not putting myself in danger, but everybody around me. There were times when I would demonstrate, I would take the snake and put it around my neck and leave him. And I would say, look, the snake is not out there to kill you. He's going to find his own way first, because he's now on a survival mode. So I would leave him and then let go of my hands, and the snake would obviously slither down. He's not going to turn around and say, who is the one who,
Mm-hmm.
And so it became that I was a popular snake guy, and everybody got to know me as the one who catches cobras. And then, so the villagers, the locals in Puttaparthi, because of the hostel and college, and everybody got to know about it. So anywhere in the mandir now, there was the Prashanti mandir, in the college, in the hostel. So my territory, my fame expanded. It became quite popular that I could catch snakes. Finally, I think there was this afternoon, I was sleeping, and this is the only time I can share with you something which is personal, but I think it has to fit in the whole story as it goes, and I'm just being very honest and upfront over here. I was sleeping, and in the midst of a vivid dream, and I'll come to that vivid dream later, which is actually a prologue to the story, but I'll come to it later. I was in the midst of a vivid dream when I was woken up around 2:30 or so in the afternoon. I was taking a small siesta because I didn't have classes to teach, and I was taking a siesta in the hostel. Somebody woke me up and said, Sunder, there's a snake in the college. And I woke up and I said, you know what, by the time I go there, there's going to be no snake. I mean, no snakes waiting, in a corner waiting, hey, Sunder is going to come and catch me. By the time people spot a snake and they call me and I go, invariably the snake wouldn't be there. So I asked this boy, are you sure he's there? Because by the time we go, I knew there was time. It was time for darshan. It was around 3 o'clock. And I said, by the time I go and the snake is not going to be there, it's just a waste of time, so I'm not coming. He said, no, the snake is there. It's by the small cages, by the bioscience laboratories. And he's been cornered. He's in the concrete floor. He's not moving. And there are people around, made a big circle. And there are some villagers with daggers and sticks waiting to kill it. So we have told them, wait, Sunder will come and you don't have to kill it. So I said, all right, I'll come. And since I got up from sleep, I wore my Hawaiian sandals, like the one you're wearing, where your toes are all completely exposed, like this famous Puttaparthi sandals. Flip-flops, thank you. Flip-flops. I wore the flip-flops, quickly wore my flip-flops and started walking towards the college. Normally I would wear shoes. I would always remember to wear sneakers. By then we were in sports meet and we had sneakers and things like that. But that afternoon, I don't know, I wasn't thinking correctly. I wore my flip-flops and started walking to the college. And I go there and I see the snake in the corner and all these people around them. Hey, Sundar's come. There's literally a cheering crowd waiting for me. People with cameras. I have the picture of me holding that snake. I have it here, and I have a soft copy of it in case you want to put it out there. But I feel very ashamed though. Anyway, they took pictures of the snake, of me. I mean, anyway, I went there. I looked for a stick. I put the head down, caught him, and this guy was huge. He was almost my height, 5 foot 5 inches. Huge snake, and I had to hold him like this instead of, usually the mouth I would hold like this, but the mouth is so big I had to actually hold him just like this. It was this thick throughout. Anyway, so I catch him and then tell the villagers and everybody to go away and then pose for some pictures. And that day was the first time when somebody took pictures. And so I posed for pictures, put the snakes, stretched the snake out and called one boy of equal height, and that boy stood and I said, oh my gosh, don't be scared, I'm just measuring the snake's height. I was in cloud 9, literally enjoying the glamour and then the All the good intentions were still there, but I think that was way out forgotten. And I walk up to the Hanuman. The Hanuman statue was not built then. The Krishna statue was built. So the Hanuman statue was just the top of the hill. So I decided to go all the way up there and throw the snake out on the other side. Now as I walk up to the Krishna statue and go up to the Hanuman statue, and I was about to throw the snake, a bunch of students came running behind me. Normally I wouldn't allow them to come all the way up to the hills, because now you're in snake territory. You're not in the compound, in the concrete. They came up and said, "Oh sir, we missed this whole thing. Come on, every time we miss it, every time you catch a snake, we miss it. And please show us again how to catch a snake. We never know when we'll get a chance again." And I decided that day, all right, you know what the heck, let me show them how to catch a snake. So I looked around for the same stick which I press the head, and I didn't find any. And I said, "Oh, you know what, I'll just try a new thing. I'll just put my foot on top of the head and press him down." This is all going in my head, and little was I thinking that I'm wearing flip-flops, and that could be a dangerous thing that I'm trying with a wild snake.
Might be a morsel for that snake to sink its fangs into.
Right. And so I hold the tail of the snake, and of course I tell them, I had basic sense to keep them at a good distance. Tell them, stay there and watch. So I held the tail of the snake and let go of the head. Yeah. And so the snake cannot climb on its own body, but so the snake was going like this on the ground, and I held him far out like this, and his head was on the ground. I let it down a little bit so his head was on the ground. He was trying to escape, poor thing. He's fighting for his life. He was not out here to help me with this freak show that I was putting up. And so when I saw his head and his hood spread out like this on the ground, I thought it was a good time now to put my foot on top. I put my foot on top of his head, looked up at the boys and said, "This is how you first hold his head." And that 10 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever it took for me to do that, I didn't realize that this was not a concrete floor underneath. Because when I put a stick on top of the snake could not go underneath because it was concrete floor. I never caught a snake in the wild. So when I put my foot on top, I thought he stays pressed, but he's fighting for his life, and that's pure muscle. So he dug himself underneath the sandy ground, which was very easy for him. He dug himself underneath, and now my foot was right in his side. He gave one nasty bite. A 5 feet 5 inch cobra, a huge snake, gave me one nasty bite and let go.
What was your immediate reaction?
Now you would think, and that's why I said I'll be upfront and humble and honest here. You would think a person who practiced 10 years of yoga, completely into Swami's fold, meditating, at this point, I would have said, "Swami, Sai Ram." I said, "Ouch!" All that came from my mouth was, "Ouch!" No Sai Ram, no Swami, nothing. That was the last thing probably in my mind. So that's again another thing, is how you think you're ready but you're not. Anyway, it didn't really matter, I guess. At that point, I felt a sharp twinge of bite. I knew it bit me. So I quickly flung him into the bushes, and I maintained a straight face, and I told the boys, "Oh, hey, it's okay, let's go back." 2 of my colleagues were with me. They saw this happening. They were much closer than the other boys. The other boys didn't know exactly what happened. So these colleagues, 2 of them, they said, "Sunder, have you been bit?" I said, "Yeah, I think I've been bit, but let's go to the hospital. Don't worry, it's okay." My initial thing was negation. I just wanted to negate the whole thing as if it didn't happen, because it was too much for me to think of what if it's true. So the immediate reaction was, "Oh, no, nothing, it's not big. I'll just go to the hospital and take a blade and slice it out and let the blood flow out, and I should be okay." And then as I started walking from where the Hanuman statue is now to the Krishna statue, which is probably a couple of 100 yards, by the time I started walking down, then the pain hit me. All of a sudden it started hitting, and then I thought my foot was on fire, because that's poison. I couldn't even take a step. The pain was unbearable. That's when I realized I cannot go to the hostel. I have to go to the hospital, which is again walking distance. I wasn't afraid of snakes because I've caught them so many times. The thought of death and other things didn't hit me yet. All that, the pain was so immense, I told the boys, "Okay, let's head to the hospital." Two of my colleagues were with me. So they said, "All right." One of them was a science student. He said, "Sunder, you're not supposed to walk. It's a snake, cobra has bit you. Let us carry you." I said, "Carry me? No way. Look at create a scene. I don't want to be carried. The great snake charmer cannot be carried." I said, "I'll walk to the hospital." I did everything that was not the right one. I tied a tourniquet, you tied a tourniquet, but I tied it in the wrong place. And I tied it in the ankle out here. If you can.
Yes.
And the reason why I want to show it is because I did take the precaution as I thought. So I tied a tourniquet here, but apparently both sides are bones here. So when you tie a tournietcate here, it's not going to be helpful. You should tie a tourniquet here. But I tied it here.
Okay.
And this is the place where the snake bit me. It's a big mark. It still hurts me. And
big mark. It's huge.
Yeah, this is exactly where it bit me, and it became a mark. And I'll come to this in a bit. But so the tourniquet that I tied here was not helpful. Apparently, as the doctors told me later, he said that is not wrong. That's the wrong place you tied a tourniquet. Hey, like I said, there was no Google. There was no place. They wait for us to prepare for this. Anyway, so I walked to the hospital, and Dr. Alreja is waiting there to greet us. Now, as I'm walking to the hospital, though the pain was unbearable, I'm still talking to my colleagues, and I'm telling them, hey, listen, we go there, Dr. Alreja is going to be there. Now, I have been in Baba's room, and I know every evening Dr. Alreja meets Baba. So now it's hitting me like, oh my gosh, what have I done? What have I done? I mean, I could be sent home for this stupid act of trying to be a snake charmer and putting myself in danger. What if Baba gets to know about this physically? I mean, pardon us, because we are so close to him, sometimes we treat it. What if Dr. Alreja gets to know what happened, and if he tells Baba this, I'm going to be out. Baba is going to get so angry of what I did. He could send me out of the ashram. And so I tell these boys, please let me do the talking. You guys don't talk. I'm going to stretch the truth as much as I can. And I'm going to tell Dr. Alreja that I was in the college, I was doing social service, and I got bit by a snake. Social service was one of the things where boys would go dig up roads and help villages do, out there working, cut grass for them and things like that. So I'll tell them I was in the college doing social service. And my definition of social service was helping the place get rid of snakes. And
sure.
So,
well, it was loosely stretched, thin enough, maybe cover possibly a little bit.
Justify, right? I justify that I'm still speaking the truth. But if I left it there, then if he goes to Swami, he can tell whatever he wants. I didn't want him to get into details of what exactly happened. So we walked there, and exactly as I expected, Dr. Alreja was there. He said, what happened? We said, snake bit us. He said, oh my God, lie down on the bed and stretcher. And then as he was wheeling me up, he said, what happened? How did it bite you? Because he knows me personally. He said, what, Sunder, how did it bite you? I said, in college I was doing social service and it bit me there. And we left it at that. He said, okay. He took my pulse and he didn't like what he saw. And so he went up and put me in a room and immediately ordered for the antidote. So I'm lying there. I looked at the clock. It was close to 4 o'clock or so. And then I'm waiting for the antidote to come. After 5 minutes, I noticed a little bit of unrest among the doctor. And somebody came and told Alreja something. He said, you look worried. He walked away. And one of my colleagues came back to me and he said, Sunder, it's okay. No, nothing happened. I said, I didn't even ask. The moment you say nothing happened to me, I know something has happened. So what is it? He says, don't worry. The guy who was the antidote, because the hospital was small, there was one steel almirah where all the medicines were kept, and antidote was in that. Now the person who had the key to it had locked it and gone for Baba's darshan, which was at 4 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So now to open that almirah, it was a glass, you could have broken it, but the almirah was steel. So to get it, you got to send somebody now to the ashram, get him or get the key and come back. And they said, oh, somebody's gone to fetch him. Don't worry, in 5 minutes he'll come back. And that's when I told this boy, I said, listen, if he's gone for darshan, and if Baba's out for darshan, nobody's going to disturb him. Going, coming, and I knew the darshan was out there. It would have been on now. And so I said, it would take him at least 40 to 45 minutes for us to get that antidote. So it's not going to work. And that's when it hit me, that I could die. And I said, okay, the antidote is not coming. So, and it's a cobra that has bit me. And already about 12 to 15 minutes has already passed by. And I was kind of feeling faint, but other than that, the burning sensation was keeping me alive, actually, in a way. So I couldn't really drift into that. I didn't know. So I told him, okay, I'm going to lie down and I'm going to practice something, and you wake me up before they inject me. And he promised he would. I lay down. Mrs. Prem Bahel, she is from the primary school, the warden of the primary school then, the principal of the primary school. These are two wonderful ladies, and I'm sure you would meet them when you go to the ashram even now. And she was there. She was a very elderly woman. She was gently, you know, her hand was on top of my head, just gently like a mother. My parents were in the ashram. They have no idea this is all going on. Anyway, she was there, and all I remember was I lay down and I closed my eyes, and I was preparing myself for the death. And being into yoga, and crazy as I was, I think I still am, my wife thinks so at least, I was wondering how should I exit my body. And I had read about Walter Cowan's story and other story about going through the dark tunnel and seeing the light at the other end. I said, am I going to do all that? Am I going to go through a dark tunnel? I was more excited about the concept that I have to die consciously. I have to allow and become one with the light. And I want to exit through the Sahasrara chakra. And that is my training for yoga. So I was lying down and preparing myself because I knew there was no possible way I could survive. So I lay down and started focusing on the light filling my body. But to be very honest, the pain was so real that I had a difficult time doing this. It's okay when you're lying after a nice yoga session and your mood is perfect, but it's a different thing when your foot is on fire literally with poison there and you're trying to meditate and calm yourself down. Mm-hmm. As far as I remember, it was 5 minutes before somebody woke me up. All because I was conscious throughout. There were no dark tunnels and lights. I wish there was. I would have written $1 million, a New York bestseller book, but I couldn't, unfortunately. There wasn't any of those. There wasn't any supernatural experience at all, other than the fact that I was completely conscious of the pain, and I was waiting for this death to come. And somebody shook my shoulder. I opened my eyes, and he said, the antidote has arrived. I said, what, in 5 minutes? You got the antidote? He said, what do you mean 5 minutes? Look at the clock. I saw the clock. It was 5 minutes to 5 o'clock. It was almost 45 to 50 minutes later. And now I cannot explain even today what was that. For me, I was conscious. It wasn't like I slipped into some zone and I came back. I was conscious. I knew it was 5 minutes. But actually, it had already 45, 50 minutes had passed by. Anyway, I came. They gave me the antidote. They said they're going to keep me overnight for an observation. And I survived. And I survived there. I ended up staying, of course, for a couple of weeks more because of my foot injury. It became localized and things like that. Story is not over yet. So in the evening, my father comes along with my mother, and of course he let go, and he said how foolish I was, and I said, promise them I won't catch a snake again. And Dr. Alreja walks in, and he says, oh, Sunder Aiyer, you have been telling us all lies. I said, what do you mean lies? He said, Baba told very clearly that it is not a snake, it is a thorn.
A thorn?
So, it's a thorn. And I said, what do you mean, Baba said? And then he explained to my dad and me what happened. He said, no, when I couldn't find the antidote, and you were lying, and I knew your pulse was falling, I immediately called the ashram. Mr. Chiranjeevi Rao was there on the phone, and I told him, please inform Swami, ASAP, that Sunder Aiyer has been bit by a snake. I don't have the antidote with me to give him right now. So his job was, when there's an emergency like this, let Swami know, because he didn't want Swami to ask later, why didn't you tell me? It was your job to bring it to my attention, right? So he wanted to bring it to Swami's attention that I've sent for the antidote, but it's not available, and there's a snake bite. So he knew that there's no way somebody could survive a snake bite. The picture here, my father then recalls what happened. Though he didn't recall the exact dialogue, my father recalls Swami coming out for darshan, and as he was crossing the ladies into the gents side, those days there was an arch in the sand. Okay, the arch, under the arch would be the ashram officials would stand, and they would not normally come in the way of Swami and his devotees unless there was something so important that couldn't wait for later in the evening. So Mr. Chiranjeevi Rao stepped out. Swami asked what it is, and then Mr. Chiranjeevi Rao told me this story later on. As he told Swami, he kneels down Swami and says, Swami, Sunder Aiyer ki paamba karsindanta. That means Sunder Aiyer has been bit by a snake. And Swami immediately retorted back. He says, no, that fellow is a drama boy. He's just doing it for my attention. It's not a snake, it's a thorn. It almost like rebuking him, saying, why did you disturb me for such a trivial thing? అది ఏం లేదు, అది ఊరికే ముళ్ళు, అది పాంపు కాదు, ఊరికే డ్రామా చేస్తున్నాడు వాడు.
That's amazing.
He's doing a drama, it's not a snake, it's a thorn, don't disturb me for this kind of, something like that, and walked away back into the darshan. So Chiranjeev Rao called back, and he probably was strong, in a strong voice, he told Alreja, what do you mean you're making me disturb Swami for these trivial things? So Alreja comes later and tells me, Sundar, you have been telling lies, this is what happened.
But what would account for the pain and the venom and whatever came off that thorn must have been like a snake venom.
You and I know it's a snake, and all my friends knew it was a snake. I knew it was a snake. But here's the thing. Here's the whole thing. I was so upset that evening when I heard this verse. I said, no vibhuti, no nothing. All I get is this kind of a thing, and Swami just puts me down, make me look like a fool. It was a snake, Swami. Come on, give me a break. You can't say it's a thorn. I was thinking in my head. All right. 2 years later.
2 years later.
I never got an answer for it. I kind of, went past that story, and I forgot about it. I always wondered why was it that a snake bite, a cobra bite, which is supposed to be systemic in nature, which would cut your oxygen supply to the brain and immediately kill you within 15-20 minutes. How was the whole thing localized in my foot? And then it became a local wound, and the wound was treated, blah blah blah. That's a whole different story. But I was always wondering why and how. I mean, I didn't have any supernatural experience either, so it was like a big thumbs down for me. But I definitely learned the lesson that I would never go and do this snake catching incident, at least not in public's view, and I kind of completely refrained from doing any of such things again. 2 years later, now that's why I said there's a prologue and an epilogue for this. Let me finish the prologue now. As I was lying that night in the hospital, and I was thinking of the day's events, that's when it hit me how foolish I was and how serious I could have been in trouble. And I actually died. My parents left and everybody left, and I was just going to sleep. And then it struck me that the afternoon, if you remember, I told you I was in the midst of a vivid dream and I was woken up. I went back to that dream, and it hit me all of a sudden. In that dream, I had died, and I'm opening a manhole, and I'm coming out of it, and there's very cloudy skies, and I see my grandfather and great-grand aunt and all these people around me. It's fascinating. I'm seeing all of them in this dream. I recollected that dream, and as I'm saying this now, I can get that dream. It was so vivid and clear. And I look around, and in a distance, a palanquin is coming towards me. 4 people are carrying a palanquin. They put it on the ground, and the curtain parts, and there's Swami inside. He says, come here. So I go to Swami, and I kneel down, and Swami says, do you want to come with me, or you want to go back down? And I look at Swami, and I'm thinking of the chances I'm getting with Swami down there. I'm thinking, Swami, I want to go down. He said, good, take namaskar. So I remember touching his feet, and I was woken up, and all this happened. I didn't even have time to recollect that dream until that night, which was for me very fascinating as to what was it. But then I just dismissed it as a dream. I said, yeah, okay, maybe it was a coincidence, maybe there's something I don't know, maybe it was something. I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. The epilogue came 2 years later. So I had forgotten about it. 2 years passed, and the more gymnastics took place, sports events and dramas went on, and more occasions to meet Swami, and other things took priorities, and this was long forgotten story. 2 years later, Swami's 65th birthday, or I think it was around that time, I was sitting and we were discussing the drama and the play, and then Swami was talking to me, and I was making all the notes, and towards the end we all got up to touch Swami's feet and got away, and I got up too to touch his feet and leave the room, when he looked at my feet down and he said, what is that mark on your foot? Because by then it's a scar which is there even today. And he says, what is that mark on your foot? I froze. I said, no, Swami, please don't make me say anything. I'm going to get into trouble now. I don't want to, you're standing in his presence. I couldn't obviously lie or even stretch the truth. I have to be blunt and honest about it. But I hate it to face the consequences of something which was done 2 years ago. I looked at him, he said, what is it? Why is that such a big mark? Very innocently. And I said, Swami, snake bit me. Swami, paambu karisindi. That is a snake bite? Is it a snake? It wasn't a snake, was it? He looks. And I'm looking at Baba, and I'm telling him almost instantly, no Swami, it was a snake. Now I want to pause for a second here, just because in Krishna and Arjuna's relationship, Baba would often tell this story, and it's a very common story from the scriptures. He would say, Krishna would look at a parrot and tell Arjuna, look at that crow. And Arjuna would say, oh, but that's a beautiful crow. And he would say, oh, it's not a crow, it's a parrot. Arjuna would say, oh yes, it is a parrot. And then, so Krishna said, don't you have something of your own? If I tell it's a parrot, you're saying yes. If I say it's a pigeon, you're saying yes. Arjuna told him, if it's a parrot for you, it better be a parrot, because I would say yes, because you can change a crow into a parrot into a crow. I would say yes. Now I thought, I liked that story, but here I am, when he asked me, looking into my eyes, it wasn't a snake, it was a thorn. Wasn't it? And I'm looking at it and said, no, Swami, it's a snake.
Well, that part you hadn't said until right now. So he actually said that to you, that
no, it'll come to that.
Okay.
What he said was, it wasn't a snake, was it? I said, Swami, no, it was a snake. I wasn't an Arjuna then. Again, another humbling factor for me. I think of that today, and I said, maybe I should have just agreed with Swami. But my senses and everything, for me, we cling to our own reality. That's what I think.
To tell the truth as you saw it.
As I saw it, but that's not, what we see here is not the truth. That's the whole beauty of it. Anyway, so I said, no, Swami, it's a snake. He said, Chichi, your imagination, go, he said. As I was leaving the room, he paused, he said, listen. And that time it was a different voice, completely different voice, a voice of one who knows. Listen, he said. I turned around and looked at Swami. He said, from my mouth, I will never say it is a snake. It is a thorn, it is a thorn, it is a thorn. From my mouth, I will never say it is a snake. Na notu nunchi adu mullani eppudiki radu. Na notu nunchi adu paambani eppudiki radu. Adi mullu, mullu, mullu. Po, he said. And as I came out and sat in the bhajan hall, I was shivering, because the truth of that statement hit me. And then I recollected 2 years ago when Chiranjirav told him, at that moment, there was no time left. It was just at that time when he had to decide and will it. There was no time even to write in the air and wave palms, no time to create vibhuti and send it to me. Almost instantly, in a matter of rebuking, he said, no, it's not a snake, it's a thorn, he's an actor. So he made the whole thing as a drama, as a play. He made it into an act, and he made the snake bite into a thorn. And he willed it as if it's a matter of, no. Now I realize why that was so fast and so abrupt and so sudden from his voice.
The
sternness in his voice was willing it then and there. Even if he had materialized vibhuti, the sacred ash, and sent it to me, it would have been another 10 minutes for it to reach me. That would have probably been too late. For me, it's fascinating, because I know it is a snake bite. The doctors knew it was a snake bite. It is a cobra bite, not even an ordinary snake. And for one to survive that by itself is a miracle. And for one now, 2 years later, to hear somebody saying, I will still not say it's a snake. It is a thorn, it is a thorn, it is a thorn. So that is why I say he believes that his word is so powerful that he can, even 2 years later, if he had agreed with me it's a snake, maybe it would have had its own consequences then.
He transmuted our idea of reality to keep you from dying a torturous death from the venom of a snake, to have you undergo in its place the pain of a thorn.
Yes.
Prick into your foot.
He localized, the whole poison was localized. I had so many other doctors who came to me weeks later after that and started talking to me and asking me, how was it? Because they were trying to put two and two together. For them too, it was something they couldn't accept, even though they were Baba devotees. They couldn't accept, how was this possible? How could a cobra bite not have killed you? Especially after having, you caught the snake, you had the snake in your hand. And of course, many years later, I shared this. When I told you about Baba picking me up to speak in Bombay, this was a story I told.
This is the one you said in Baba's presence?
In Baba's presence in Bombay. And Baba listened to the whole.
To see how he might have reacted to that story?
No, I didn't. By then I was, after Baba confirmed to me, saying it's a thorn, and the way he said it, the two things touched me most. One was, a mother would never say my son was near death experience. She would never say that. So that was one part of him saying, I will never say it's a snake bite. And the other part was his divinity saying, no, I will never say it. I've said it's a thorn, it's going to be a thorn. Wow. It will always be a thorn.
Sunder, read my lips, it was a thorn. That's
Exactly.
pretty much what he was insisting.
Exactly.
In spite of your snapshot of reality,
Yes.
from your senses, from the pain, from what you knew to be the case.
Yes. And that's so powerful, because when he says something, it happens. That's why when he said there would be a hospital, there was a hospital. When he said this would be a university, there was a university. There's nothing stopping him. He would will it. And that is what awakens me from the depths of sleep once in a while as to where does that power? Who is this person? Who is this being walking amongst us?
Sunder, the final story for this installment has to do with something that near and dear to your heart, and also I'm sure quite sad, the loss of your father.
Yes. The reason I share that story is again to prove Swami's omniscience, and this is where I saw the cosmic part of Sai, the almighty, powerful master walking the earth. Somebody who would say, I am the divine. For somebody to come up with that, for me to be able to digest that fact, I think this one experience proved it beyond doubt. It's one thing to say I am divine, and the other thing is to actually prove to you. And yes, he had proved it innumerable times, but this was something very profound, and it has so many lessons. So let me get to it straight away, since we have very little time left on this segment. My father was, like I said, an extremely rigid disciplinarian, and for him, life was a very serious thing. I mean, he would take up seva very seriously, and he would, when Swami said, you are in charge of the central trust accounts, he said, okay, I am, and he thought the whole trust was resting on his shoulders, and that's it. For him, that was the whole world. He wouldn't even come for darshan, because it was his office time. And so he would be out there, and every time Swami had to speak to him on my father's birthday or bless him, he would tell me, I'm going to talk to your father tomorrow, so ask him to come. Everybody wants interviews with Swami. They ask Swami, I have to ask your father for an interview. He would, playfully chide me. But my father was, for me, darshan is not important. He has given me a task, I will do that.
And before you proceed, a word or two about how he received such an awesome responsibility. He was in charge of the accounts for the whole trust that ran Prashanti Nilayam?
The Satya Sai Central Trust. He was in charge of the trust. At that time, the trust was growing, and so he would sit with the internal and external auditors, and and account for every single expense, and help them make the double entry, and set up a lot of things in those days. He was an accountant, so when he came and retired, Swami said, "Can you be an accountant here?" And so he sat with Colonel Jogarao, and Colonel Jogarao liked him and told Swami he's a great candidate. And Swami said, yes, okay, then put him in charge of the accounts. And for Swami, my father, that was the ultimate. He said, finally I can actually write accounts honestly. See, he's been working for commercial companies, and he would always have this in the back of my mind. When can I ever find a honest accountant? When can I ever be an honest person to say, okay, this is a liability, this is an asset, and this is how it is to be.
No more cooking the numbers.
No more cooking the numbers. And he was very glad, and for him that was the fruit of all his labor throughout his life, found fulfillment at serving Baba. Just like Maya says, her father was longing to fly, and finally all his flight carriers ended up flying for Swami. So I guess every carrier, no matter how unconnected it might seem, you have Ted Henry doing the news reading for 40 years, somewhere thousands of miles away, but now he's able to use his talent to serve Baba in the fag end of his career. I mean, after retirement, you're using the same talent and using it for Baba's mission.
Along with Jodi Cleary's guidance.
Oh, of course.
Which she gets from Baba.
Of course, there is no doubt about it. I mean, the reason why I bring this about is quite a few people think that what they're doing is not spiritual.
Yeah.
And something spiritual has to be something else.
Great point.
No, I think every single career, every single task you take has a potential of being a matter of service to God. I met, I have a friend in Dayton, an extremely well-known, a very profound accountant, in the sense he brings about merging of different companies, and he helps in all this kind of stuff. He's a great helper in preparing business plans and things like that. Now he takes young adults and youngsters from Swami's fold and helps them come up with good business plans. He says, that's my seva for Swami, that's my talent, I'm using it. So, and apparently a business plan which is just dry numbers and about profits, he is taking that and making it his worship. I think anything and everything, if you look for it to be spiritual, can be spiritual.
Work is worship.
Work becomes worship. And that's the beauty of this lesson I found. Anyway, my father was so strict about his work, so for him that was his worship. And Swami would have to call him, wait for him, and speak to him if he had to speak something. That relationship was amazing. My father's only desire as a Hindu Brahmin was to die in Puttaparthi. He said, this is my only desire, I have to die in Puttaparthi. And he told my mother, when I die, you should chant Gayatri in my ear, don't cry. Don't be crying and wailing. You should be chanting Gayatri in my last moments of my life. And my mother would say, oh yeah, you do the same thing to me too. And I would sit down and say, you know what, don't you guys have anything better to speak about? But that's how my father was. For him, everything was a matter of, okay, this has to be done this way. And that's it, no second thoughts about it. 1992 summer, Swami had to leave for Vrindavan, and my father, and Swami had specifically told my father that summer he would not be in Puttaparthi. He said, summer you go, spend with your daughters and your grandchildren, and then you come back, your son is going to be here. So 1992 he left for
Kodaikanal or Vrindavan?
Swami left for Vrindavan and then Kodaikanal, but my father planned to leave on April 1st, on April 2nd or 3rd, he planned to leave for to the north to see his daughters, that's my sisters. He went to Bhopal, which is a far off place, about 3,000 miles from Puttaparthi. And so he went to Vrindavan, Swami blessed him, Swami said go, he took Swami's blessings and then went to Bhopal. And just before that he had met Maya and he told me that he likes Maya and Maya is the right person for me. He blessed both of us. I said, I don't know, this is all up to Swami, but for him it was something had to be done. And I realized now that was 20 days before he died. So April 1st we celebrate as our engagement day. Also an April Fool's Day. But my father blessed both of us and said, when I come back, we will take it up with Swami. April 9th, I remember, he left for Bhopal. And this was my father's only desire, because anybody dying in Puttaparthi, he would be there, out there, he will do the last rites for them and take the body to Puttaparthi and do the cremation and do all that. Because he said, as a Hindu Brahmin, it's my duty to do that. Honor any fallen body and never let them know that there was nobody to give them. In India, that's a very sacred thing. It says Kandadena, means don't let a dead body just be there to rotten. You would always give a shoulder for a dead body. And that's why people have sons, because they say the sons can carry them when they die, and things like that. So my father was always wanting to die in Puttaparthi. That was his biggest desire. When he went to Bhopal, he had a heart attack. I got a telegram, and by the time I reached, he died. He died in some unknown, weird place in Bhopal on April 20th. When I got a call, I rushed, and I didn't know it. They said, father's serious. I rushed. And by the time I reached there, I saw him in a coffin with ice, and they just preserved the body for 1.5 days before I came. Of course, I was heartbroken. I went and spoke to my mother, and my mother, in amidst sobs and tears, she told me, I did exactly as your father wanted me to. When he kept watching the monitor, though it was behind him, he would turn his head and kept watching the monitor, I believe. Suddenly his kidney failed and blah blah blah, is a multi-organ failure or whatever, and that was a small hospital. They didn't know what to do about it. He told my mother like this, when the time came, my mother sat, she made him sit, went into his ear, chanted the Gayatri, and then he collapsed on her shoulder. So she told me, I did my job. For me, those first 2 hours was blank, and then came an anger towards Swami.
In you?
In me.
For disappointing your dad's?
My anger was, I said, I know my father had to die, I was ready for that, but why here? You were talking about the 3 zeros, right? This was partly one of those zeros where I said, why here? This was a person who served you day and night. This is a person who thought about you day and night. And his 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock morning ritual never stopped even for a day, whether he slept at 1 in the night or 7 in the evening or 2 in the night. He would be up, get up, have his ritual bath and do the chanting, and he was so rigid, so rigid. I said, why couldn't that one desire be fulfilled? Why in this unknown place? Even today, I don't even know where his body was cremated. So why would it be here? And I was so angry with Swami. There was no room for any doubts anymore, because I had seen Swami's omniscience and omnipotence many times over. So there wasn't that he didn't know I said, why would Swami allow this to happen? Why would this happen? I was very angry with him. So my mother asked, don't you want to send a telegram to Swami? I said, I'm not even interested in informing him. I'll take care of it. I'll send him maybe a week later, 10 days later. I'm not even interested in informing. So nobody informed anybody in the ashram because they waited for me to do whatever, They said, okay, it's your call, whatever. And then I waited there, spent 10, 12 days, did all the rites that they wanted me to do, and then sent a telegram to Swami just as a formality. Swami, father passed away, pronounced. That's all I said, because I was very angry. I didn't want to say anything. I stayed there for some time, and then I came back to Vrindavan, and Swami had returned back from Kodaikanal. And so when he came out for darshan, I was sitting in the first line. He came out straight to me, and he said, Chesko, means touch my feet. Okay, I touched his feet, I looked up to him, and he said, don't worry, I'm here. And then suddenly he had a playful thing in his eyes. He said, did the boys tell you in Kodaikanal what happened? Did they tell you? I'm like, Swami, what would they tell me? I said, no, Swami. Oh, wait, I'll come back from darshan and tell you. So he goes off for darshan. And then I couldn't wait, of course, for Swami to come back and tell me what was it that he wanted me to know. So I turned around, and one of the Kodaikanal boys came to me and Sunder, I heard about your dad, and I'm so sorry to hear about his death. I said, thank you for your condolence. So he said, Sunder, I want to check something with you. I said, sure, what is it? He pulls out his diary and he goes to the dates, and he said, when did your father die? I said, April 20th, he passed away. He said, what time? I said, what do you mean, what time? From what the doctors told me, it was at 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon, he died. So I asked him, why are you asking me these details? He pulls out his diary and he says, Sunder, look at this. On April 20th in the afternoon, Swami was with us in Kodaikanal. At this time, around 3:30 or 4 or whatever the time was, he pauses, he keeps quiet for a while, for a few seconds. And then he asks people, now this is happening thousands of miles away. He's asking people around him, how many of you know Sunder Ayer's father? How many of you know Sunder Aiyer? So obviously the boys knew, because I was there in Puttaparthi. So they raised their hands. A couple of primary school people raised their hands and said, we know Sunder Aiyer. And Swami said, oh, you all know him? Yeah, his father just reached my feet. I listened to what that boy said. I was stunned. And then Swami comes back from darshan, calls me inside. Did you know what I said? Did you know what I said? Oh, your father wanted to go to Chitravati. That is only the body. I gave him my feet. The reason why this is so powerful is we think we ask for the highest, not knowing that God has even greater plans for us. So for him, the body was nothing. The body can perish wherever it is. But the fact that he said, oh, your father wanted to go to Chitravati. The body can go anywhere. I gave him my feet. So on the one side, what hit me was for him to say, I have given him my feet. He has come into me. Why? He said, and he asked me, why? Enduku telusa? He said, because he served me. Because he served me, he has reached my feet. That is the importance he gives for service. And this is such a powerful story that I often think of as the ultimate revelation for me as to who Baba is. And that's why, for me to even define him as God is limiting who he is.
Sunder, I'm speechless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing from beyond your heart. And Sairam.
Thank you.